Hello and welcome to Mid-Coast Morning, CHLY's weekly current affairs show. I'm your host, Joe Pugh. Here's what we're following this week. 7 BC mayors signed a letter in support of Vancouver's request to decriminalize simple possession of street drugs. Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krog was one of them. We talked about his endorsement of this model and how it relates to our city. Elsewhere, the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre and Mid Island Metis are attempting to launch the first urban indigenous independent school in the province. I spoke with Joy Bremner, leader of the Mid Island Metis Nation, as well as Dale Burgos, the executive director of communications with School Board 68, about what has led to this point. Also this week, the Port Theatre plays host to its first show in some time, a live stream concert from local rapper Surreal. I spoke with him about the show and how he hopes his music can spread hope even to people who aren't normally into hip-hop. We begin though with the headlines from CHLY's Elijah Robinson.
On June 14th, Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krog offered his condolences to the family and friends of Graham Roberts, who served as the mayor of Nanaimo from 1984 to 1986. Roberts passed away in his Brentwood Bay home on Saturday, June 12th, at the age of 89. Although his time spent as Nanaimo's mayor was short, he played a significant role in the city's colorful history. For instance, in 1986, Prince Charles and Princess Diana made a trip to Nanaimo to help Roberts proclaim the city's new tagline, the Harbor City. Also, the city's waterfront underwent vast development under his watch, and he was the person that attributed the ultimate Nanaimo bar recipe to Joyce Hardcastle for her recipe of a traditional style bar, which topped a plethora of contending recipes. On Wednesday, June 16th, the Nanaimo RCMP Serious Crime Unit upgraded the death of the 27-year-old local outreach worker Amy Watts as a homicide. Over 50 people attended a candlelight vigil in downtown Nanaimo in honor of Watts on the same day. Watts' body was discovered near Albert Street and Victoria Crescent on Thursday, June 3rd, just a week after she was reported missing. According to Constable Gary O'Brien, Media Relations Officer of the Nanaimo RCMP, no arrests have been made as of Thursday, June 16th. The City of Nanaimo's Parks, Recreation, and Culture Department is inviting community members to showcase their skills as an instructor in the upcoming Fall 2021 Activity Guide. Program proposals for a variety of areas including dance, cooking, language, arts and crafts, music, outdoor recreation, and more are now being accepted. Hard copy applications will no longer be accepted, so applicants must apply online. The program proposal process is an online form to be filled out, which can be located on the Nanaimo Parks, Recreation, and Culture website. Applicants are encouraged to review the current activity guide in an effort to avoid duplication of currently scheduled classes. Submissions received by 4:30 p.m. on July 14th will be considered for the 2021 Fall Activity Guide, while winter season program proposals may be submitted until September 30th, 2021. After 5 months of construction, the City of Nanaimo announced that upgrades to the exterior of the theater at 25 Victoria Road are now complete. The renovations come as part of a multi-year plan to make improvements to the city-owned building. The scope of work includes new brickwork and new lighting, amongst other improvements, which will help enhance the theater's neighborhood presence. The City of Nanaimo co-manages the building with the Harbor City Theatre Alliance Society, who has run the small community performing arts space since 2014. The society has revealed a new brand identity for the building, formerly titled the Harbor City Theatre, and will resume activity this summer, according to COVID-19 safety guidelines, under the name the OV Arts Center.
This month, the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre, in conjunction with the Mid Island Metis, launched a GoFundMe looking to raise $1 million to launch the province's first urban independent Indigenous school. The move comes as 2 Indigenous learning centres in the city face impending changes. Nasika Kumtuks and Tsawak learning centres have been offering community-based learning programs for a number of years under School District 84. But now, the province is moving the centres into District 68. To understand what these changes mean and what the future holds for the students affected, I spoke with Joy Bremner, leader of the Mid Island Metis. Right now, you're looking to start the first urban Indigenous school in British Columbia. Can you give me a little bit of the background on what has led to this?
Okay, so 7 years ago, the Mid Island Metis Nation and the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre, along with the partner of Boys and Girls Club here in Nanaimo, had, received questions and concerns from some parents that their children were struggling within the public school system. And so at that point, the three groups partnered and opened Nasika Kumtuks, the elementary program. And we began very small with kindergarten to grade 3 and only 13 students in our first year. And then the next year, the number grew a bit. And then in our third year, there were parents coming to us with high school students that were struggling. And many had actually dropped out of the public school system. And that is when we opened the Sidewalk Learning Center. And so at that point, it was grade 8 to grade 12. And we were unsure how many would be registered that very first year. But the first year, I believe, it instantly climbed to 53 students. And, and at that point, all along, right from the beginning, we had been approaching the Nanaimo School District to see if they would be interested in partnering or somehow assisting us in these programs. And they had been unable to do so, and for their very own reasons. And we had began actually reaching out, and the Gold River School District came on as the public school system that would support the program, which then allowed us to actually be going forward as a teaching institute. And then, we've continued over the years. The Nasika Kumtuks then had grown to kindergarten to grade 7, and with 2 large mixed classes, and and Sidewalk itself, we had 63 students, I believe, this year, and each year we've had various struggles for a number of our students. But with the innovative program and wraparound services we were attempting and including it in their journey through their education, we began to have more and more graduates out of grade 12. For instance, this year I've just left the grade 12 graduation ceremony for 12 students. An additional one that we were recognizing as well as only has two actual projects to finish up, and he will also receive his diploma. So, in that, when you consider that number of graduates that we've actually been assisting to get through their high school education, this sort of wraparound and innovative, land-based, culturally supportive, elders present regularly, partnering with different organizations in the city of Nanaimo, out at the farm, for instance, all of those sorts of additional life skill and yet educational contributions to their moving forward have really been a major part of the success. And again, each step along the journey, we continue to keep in touch with 68 in the hopes that they would be interested in partnering with us. And then the Ministry of Education decided that these programs had to be transferred back to the Nanaimo School District. And so essentially that shut our learning centers down, because then, we had been unable to partner in the same way with the Nanaimo School District. And we have to give full credit to the Nanaimo District. They have been, really seriously looking at including some of the things that we had been doing and able to, transfer these students back in as safe a manner as they were able to within their own system. And when you consider that, essentially this last year we've had 100 students, and the Nanaimo School District is over 12,000 students. So you can imagine the complexity of trying to actually create such an individual program for a small group of students that has challenges. So, we know that 75% of our learners are actually indigenous, but we're open to all non-indigenous students as well. So you had a question.
So you've talked about it a little bit already. But I'm wondering if you could explain, maybe for those who don't know, how the education at these two learning centers is different.
Okay. And again, because the indigenous cultures, and one thing to consider is that currently there were like 23 students from 23 different indigenous nations. And so their cultural background, quite often, when you think of that, all those nations are not local. And so they've come away from their home, and they can be somewhat distant from their own culture, and bringing and sharing and having that culture be a part of their everyday learning atmosphere is just so healthy for them. And for many, even it was pieces their families themselves had lost just from being removed from their own communities, as well as, the sorts of wraparound things, the land and sea program, and even, coming in and various members of our own organization, the Mid Island Metis Nation, we've gone in and done cultural cooking classes, moccasin making. I know there was drum making and the dancing and the songs that they've learned. And that's all an integral part of every day at the schools. And that part itself meant such a huge component and variety to it, and an engagement that may not necessarily be able to occur in the normal public school system.
We've talked about the provinces making this change and trying to bring Tsawwack and Nisika into School Board 68. What will happen if that goes ahead?
And as it was directed by the Minister of Education, it is going ahead. As of June 30th, our two learning centers, Nisika and Tsawwack, will be closed. And again, somebody said, well, why do you have to close your centers? Well, the piece of it is they were learning or education centers, and were supported through the public school system through the Gold River District. And so as the Nanaimo District is not interested in continuing that form of partnership with us, then we've had to close those learning centers, and those students are being registered in the Nanaimo School District. One of our concerns absolutely for, our high school students is the fact that many of them had left the Nanaimo School District. And so this is very concerning for them and their families, and on some levels quite frightening, because there they are being asked to go back to a system that they had failed and left from. And, and the Nanaimo District is attempting very much to change how they are being brought in and creating an atmosphere that can be as safe and as culturally sound, perhaps, as what they've come through our programs. But at this point, we'd also just, and during this process, the partners, the Indigenous partners have not been asked at this point, really. It has not been worked out how we will be a part of this next September when these students are then there. And I do believe that just this morning it was mentioned that at some point we will need to begin that conversation. And, for us, in order for this to be an actual seamless transition for these students, that perhaps may have been necessary for that to be an integral part of the conversation right from the start and regarding the transition, just so we all even could understand where each of us is coming from, the school district, the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre, and Mid Island Metis Nation.
So because of these developments, you're working to try and launch the first urban Indigenous school in BC. Can you tell me a little bit about how those efforts are going?
And so we had actually made an application since we began with our letter of intent with the Indigenous branch of the Ministry of Education, and that was in December. And then we followed through along every step of the way, and then our final piece had to go in at, I believe it was the end of May. And when we submitted it, it turned out that the site we were looking at, that we would then combine and have a K-12 system, and the site we were looking at did not qualify. And as their process is very strict and very tight in terms of their timeline, that then disallowed our application for an interim license to begin in September this fall. So what the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre now has now launched a GoFundMe page, and we're looking at then raising the funds to go forward for September in 2022. And a part of that is to identify a site that would be applicable and would qualify in order for us to have the independent school on, as well as, just we will once again next December have to begin our application again. And so just in terms of that, this, on the one hand, unfortunately, our students will be simply attending a new environment, but where our fingers are crossed that it goes very well for them. And then again, for September 2022, we will be looking at opening the first urban indigenous independent school. And, it's an interesting concept. As we've noticed the success of all of our students over the last 7 years and the growth, the potential, many of the high school students even are going off to university now. All of that stuff makes it really well worth it for us in really exploring and continuing the fact that many of the Indigenous students do not function or succeed in the normal public system. And for various reasons, and many of them come from, home life, lifestyles, and from trauma throughout their upbringing. And, there's no doubt about the residential schools still are having an impact on many of these students through the intergenerational impacts. And I think exploring it and having the opportunity to do this model in a legitimate system is really important. And one thing about it being an independent school is then we would not be intruding on any school district itself, as independent schools are able to set up anywhere. So that creates that opening. And this is a really interesting model that may work in many other centers as well. When we look at, very often the Indigenous students are in the higher brackets of those who do not manage to graduate and who are not successful necessarily in the public school system.
And is there anything else on this issue you would like people to know?
And I think, it's even, some of the interviews, there have been some comments that have come back and basically it is really coming, those negative comments that are coming at us are from those individuals that really don't have an understanding of who we are and what our lives have been and how we've arrived where we are. And so I think this is, for myself and the Nanaimo Aboriginal Centre, this is a really important time of an increased awareness for everyone in terms of the Indigenous population and what has gone before, and acknowledging what has happened, all of those various things that have negatively impacted us and created trauma. And then even this effort even this effort that we are taking and attempting to move forward with this independent school, this urban Indigenous independent school, is the fact of we're attempting to take an action that could benefit all of our Indigenous students as well as non-Indigenous students. That's a piece that's really important here. Our non-Indigenous students have embraced the Indigenous culture as much as our Indigenous students have. So, that in sharing that and becoming aware of who each and every one of us is just a priority in ensuring healthy and safe environments going forward in education for our children.
Thank you very much for taking the time to speak with me.
Thank you very much for having me.
Joy Bremner, leader of the Mid Island Metis, on efforts to found the first urban independent Indigenous school in BC. I also spoke to Dale Burgos, Executive Director of Communications from School District 68, in order to better understand the developments from the board's perspective.
So first off, I understand that, this story had come up because the Nanaimo Aboriginal Center had or is seeking independent school status. So I just wanted to start off the conversation by saying that the district is in full support for the center's application for independent school status. That being said, we're very excited to have the students joining our district. They do live in our region, and so it makes sense that they are in our schools. Now, the program themselves, I wanted to point out as well, because some of the conversation happening in the community right now is that the programs are going to be discontinued. And so I wanted to make it clear that Nisikikumtuks and Sidewalk Learning Centers, their programming, their cohorts, those will remain the same. And maybe just to clarify maybe some of the process, Joe. So with SD84, where they were placed previously, they would have had to apply or register into that school district. And so I'll use the example for Nisikikumtuk students. Those are the earlier year students. So they had to register into Ray Watkins Elementary. So for the district here, those elementary students will be registering into Bayview Elementary. Now, that is the sister school. However, Nisikikumtuks, the facility, the center will remain. They will be able to use that, and the funding is there for the year, for the next school year rather. And then for the Sawak, the older students, they have to register into the Learning Alternatives Department. And so we've got our Learning Alternatives Department is based out of a couple schools. There's John Barsby, and then there's also the former Woodland Secondary site. And again, programming remains the same. Those students can leave that program though, and they can choose other programs that maybe they feel would suit their needs. But the Salwalk program continues in the Learning Alternatives Department. And so that's continuing on for the next school year. So essentially programming, the cohorts all remain the same.
So will the staff remain the same as well?
Now that's the other piece too, and that's a great question, Joe. So with staff, and this is the same as if it were an SD84 or any other school district in the province, the teachers in that program, they've been transitioned from SD84 to SD68, so they're essentially employees. But like how any position works in the district is, when it's open or when it's new to the district in this case, there's a collective agreement process that's put in place, and that's through the Nanaimo District Teachers Association, a collective agreement. Again, very, very similar to, what would happen in SD84 or any other district in the province. And so they have the opportunity to remain in their position, but they do have to follow through with the collective agreement process.
What has the consultation process been like between School Board 68 and the two centers?
Well, it first started out, we had somebody from the ministry come in. We had an appointed person come in and help with the ministry to determine the programs and then determine if it was to be transitioned. And of course, as we all know, through the ministerial order, pursuant to the ministerial order, that the program was to be transitioned over. And so what I'm told, and I haven't been a part of that process, but I do get enough information from the people involved in it, and that's of course from our board chair and our superintendent. They've told me that it's been a collaborative process working with the Aboriginal Center, and that would have been with their current executive director, and then they also just recently, that's the newest one. They had an executive director in place for years. However, I believe that person is no longer with the organization. So the conversations continued on with the new executive director, with Mid Island Metis, and of course through those two programs, I believe they've been in constant contact with their families.
I've heard some concern expressed that some of the students who were at Sawak and Nisikikumtuks came there after leaving the Nanaimo school district. And so there's some concern that now with these programs being rolled back in, there could be some issues. What's your response to that?
Well, Joe, there's been a lot of change, and I'm not going to say that, it's never been the same, and it is unfortunate that, they felt like they weren't supported. So again, like I mentioned, it's great to have that opportunity to have those students back. Just in the last number of years, it's really important to note that we've got a board who added truth and reconciliation to their board goals, and we have a superintendent whose primary focus or top priority has been identifying our vulnerable youth. And a lot of our vulnerable youth out there are our Indigenous students. And through some of the programs, so I mentioned learning alternatives, right? So there's that's a school in and of itself. And in that program, there are a lot of students, and some of them are Aboriginal or Indigenous, I should say. And we've seen tremendous success in the last number of years. So through that program, we've got the Aboriginal Outreach Program. We've got a director of instruction focused mainly on Indigenous learning. We've got teachers and EAs who mainly, again, focus on Indigenous learning. There has been protocols in place or practices in place, rather, where it's been identifying the vulnerable youth. Who are they? We've had people going to individuals, to students' homes to make sure that they are coming to school. And just in the Learning Alternatives Department, let me give you an example here. They've seen the largest number of graduates in that program since, and like I'm telling you, that's our vulnerable students. And we've got a principal over there whose primary focus is making sure that we see the kids that don't typically fit in a classroom setting. We tailor their learning in a way that keeps them engaged and keeps them in school. And so, going back to it, 80 graduates in that program just in 2021, and that's a near 100% graduation rate, and that's never seen before in that program. And that's a lot to do with the opportunities that we've seen, again, working with our First Nations partners or our land partners. There's the co-governed school, right? Quam Stiwiko School on Nanaimo First Nation land. That was a new school to the district. We have staff. We have, the funding from the district goes towards that school, but it's on reservation land, and so it's a co-governed site. And so that's something that is a true testament to where the district is heading in terms of Indigenous learning and accepting and working with our Indigenous partners on the learning aspect of it all. And so one other piece, and one statistic is since 2015, and from my recollection, I think Nisika and Sawak, they opened their doors around that same time. But since 2015, we've actually seen a 17% increase in Indigenous grad rates. And if you're not too familiar with that, I mean, we typically on a district would see, 1 or 2%, 3%, 5% increase, year over year, or decrease year over year. So 17% since 2015 is a considerable amount. And so, that's why I'm comfortable in saying that I'm excited that these students are coming into the district. If they choose to stay in the program that they're in, and so that would, of course, be in the Nisika context and Sawak, the program will remain. It may be called something different because, the names come from the land, or they come from the programming, right? And so I'm not sure if you understand how that is, but Quam Stiwiko, for example, that was named by the Nanaimo First Nation. So we want to pay respect, of course, to the land and to the peoples of our land. And so, again, like I said, the programs remain the same. The staff have the opportunity to remain in that program. And like I said, it's just, having the Sawak students moving into the Learning Alternatives sites, they have the opportunity to stay in their cohort, but they're getting an upgraded facility. They're getting an actual education facility. So it's a former high school. It's still a high school, but it's built for learning. And so they have access to their own gym, to technology, to classroom space, to kitchen space. And so my understanding is that wasn't the case at the other school. And so, again, like I said, this is an amazing opportunity for those students to have.
I'm a little bit curious as to how the genesis of the situation and why these two centers were working with School Board 84, I believe it was, previous, instead of School Board 68 in the first place. Are you aware of that?
I do know some of the history about this, Joe, and I believe through the Nanaimo Aboriginal Center, through, I believe there were various partners. Mid Island Metis, of course, was one of them. And the thought was they wanted to have that indigenous learning center in an urban setting. I believe that's their goal in creating an independent school. However, the programming that we had in the district, again, goes back a number of years now. We were providing those same services in the district. And so my understanding, though, is there was an appetite for the NAC to create their own space. Now, the funding is another piece. And so going to SD 84, but still being in SD 68 property, or not property, but region or contract catchment area is the better word for it. That doesn't happen across the province. You don't see that same partnership across the province. And so, making sure that we can support the students of our region through the ministry and having the ministerial the memorandum of understanding come through, it made sense for them to be back under the umbrella of SD 68. And now with the enhanced programming and just more programming that we offer, we feel that it is a good opportunity for those students.
All right. Thank you very much for your time.
No problem, Joe. Take care.
Dale Burgos, Executive Director of Communications with the Nanaimo Ladysmith School District. You're listening to Mid-Coast Morning. We're currently looking for a show sponsor. As a non-profit, your contributions go directly towards supporting our news department and making sure we can continue to bring you the local stories you care about through an independent lens. Email sales@chly.ca. Monday, June 21st is National Indigenous Peoples Day. In honor of the day and to remember the 215 children found on the site of the Kamloops Residential School, VIU's Office of Indigenous Education and Engagement and Services for Aboriginal Students invite you to help decorate 215 orange wooden hearts at the Royal Bank Plaza on VIU's Nanaimo campus. They ask that you wear a mask and register in advance on Eventbrite. Here's a new release from Halifax's Jordan and Haida Gwa's Carsen Gray. We All Here.
Have to stay the same. Steady losing when there's more to gain. But if we don't work things out inside ourselves, then we can never make a difference. I know I wanna make a difference. Don't you want things to be different? 'Cause things get hard when we run out of love. Yeah. And things get hard when we don't try enough. So let's try. Change that we want to see. Yeah. Oh.
We all hear from Jordan and Carsen Gray. You're listening to Mid-Coast Morning on CHLY. Turning now to developments with the story in Vancouver, where they've submitted a proposal to Health Canada requesting an exemption from federal drug laws to eliminate criminal penalties for simple possession of street drugs. The original motion was passed unanimously by Vancouver City Council, and this week the mayors of 7 other BC communities came out in support of the move via a signed letter. One of the 7 was Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krog. He spoke with me about why he's lending his support to the motion. Here is our conversation. What made you publicly come out in support of the Vancouver model now?
I support it because I am part of the BC Urban Mayors Caucus, as are most of the mayors, if not all of them, who signed on. We are facing in our streets, as is true of the streets of every community in this country virtually, a significant problem with mental health, addictions, and brain injury suffered by people who are populating our streets, living in lives that are frankly hell, and often making it hell for others. I'm supportive of this because what Vancouver is saying, and the statement says very clearly, it's to allow Vancouver to explore this groundbreaking approach. It would be an experiment, in a sense. We'd see what happened with it. But for me, the more important thing in some respects is not so much this, it is saying, look, we reaffirm that in addition to the potential new tool that this crisis in our streets requires, multiple overlapping strategies. We need access to safe supply of pharmaceutical alternatives, expanded harm reduction services, improved primary and mental health supports, flexible pathways to treatment, and culturally appropriate options, and stigma-free and educational programming. In other words, it's a much bigger ask than just decriminalization of illegal drugs for personal use. This is part, as I see it, of an ongoing cry, a plea from the people of British Columbia, indeed the citizens of Canada, to fix this problem, to help the people in need. We are seeing literally thousands and thousands of Canadians dying every year, essentially in our streets in 50% of the cases, or at home in the other half. And this is a way of addressing that, and it's worth a try.
And last year, the Canadian Association of Police Chiefs came out in favor of decriminalizing simple possession. So is there any serious opposition to this type of approach? Why haven't we seen this approved already?
Well, I think there's a very common and not a surprising reaction by many people who say quite bluntly, look, I don't take drugs, I obey the law, I pay my taxes, and now you want me to give free drugs to people who we know, with confidence, probably every day of their lives are out stealing from us, those good citizens, so to speak, to support their habits. And now you want me to pay for their drugs too, and give them legal license to do so? I mean, that's the reason why I think at the guts of it is the political reaction from a number of folks who are simply opposed to drug use, period, but also see it as a moral failing and as a choice, as opposed to many of us who have accepted that you may be experimenting to start, you may not be intending to develop an addiction, but once you've developed an addiction, yours is a health problem and has to be treated as such.
And the model we're talking about is for Vancouver, but is this something that we could see Nanaimo pursue in the near future?
I don't think you'd see Nanaimo pursue it in the near future. We're looking at trying this out in what has been historically the center of this kind of street and social disorder. It's the appropriate place for it. I'm not going to ask the citizens of Nanaimo at this stage without seeing it in action. And again, because quite frankly, we do not have the other things that I've talked about or the statement talks about, including primary and mental health supports, pathways to treatment, appropriate culturally appropriate options, and stigma-free educational programming, and so on. None of that stuff is in place.
In your view,
one would hope.
What are the next steps to put those measures in place?
Oh, look, many of those steps are already underway with the province. And that includes housing and appropriate housing options for people dependent on the nature of their addiction or mental health or brain injury issues. It's happening. Is it happening fast enough? No. But is it happening? Yes. We have pursued a policy over the last 30 or 40 years of deinstitutionalizing a number of people who formerly would have spent at least part, if not potentially their whole lives, in some form of secure facility. They've now been literally put out onto the streets to fend for themselves, and the result is obvious to everyone. Ask the parents of a severely addicted, brain-injured schizophrenic who's been living on the streets for years what they think. Do they think they should be secure facilities, appropriate therapeutic communities, a course of treatment, a continuum of care and treatment? Absolutely they do, and they're desperate for it to happen. What the housing crisis, the affordability crisis, and the opioid crisis have done is make this more apparent for everybody. When the streets were emptied with COVID, the people who were left on it were the most vulnerable, the saddest and most severe cases. And it is put it front and center in everybody's line of vision. And one would hope that that means there'll also be a political focus and a vision for creating and implementing the solutions we have to have. It is just wrong to have this number of our fellow Canadians dying and living in our streets day after day without any real prospect of improvement for them, their families, their loved ones, or the communities in which they live.
And is there anything else you'd like to touch on this issue that we haven't covered already?
Yeah, I sincerely hope that folks will not focus on this request as simply, decriminalize or legalize, so to speak, or overlook possession of illicit drugs, that they will see this as part of a long shopping list of necessary solutions. It's like focusing on safe supply. Safe supply in and of itself isn't going to fix anybody. Harm reduction services isn't going to fix anybody. Just having mental health support without other solutions and supports isn't going to fix anybody. This requires a multi-pronged, universal, effective, locally available approach. And this is just, as I say, for me, a cry from the City of Vancouver, supported by those of us who want this fixed, asking the federal authorities to consider this as part of that long list of solutions. There's a lot to be done. I am optimistic that there is political will and, more importantly, arguably, political pressure to fix this. Because right now, what we're allowing to happen in our streets is good for no one. It's hard on everyone, and it's just perpetuating human misery that shouldn't exist.
Mayor Krog, thank you very much for agreeing to speak with me.
Thank you for raising the issue, and I hope that your listeners will take the time to express their concerns to their politicians. We need to get this fixed. As I say, there were two topics on people's minds and that they talk to me about on a very regular basis. One is the COVID, obviously, and the second one, it's referred to as the homelessness crisis by many, but what they're really talking about is the mental health, addictions, brain injury crisis, and coupled with their homelessness issues. And you know what? They just want both to go away. They just want it fixed. They want to have lives that all of us can enjoy, and including those who suffer from addiction or mental health issues.
I think pretty much everyone can get behind those sentiments.
Yes, I hope so too.
Nanaimo Mayor Leonard Krog on his support for Vancouver's request to decriminalize simple possession of street drugs. You're listening to Mid-Coast Morning on CHLY, also available as a podcast. This coming week, we'll see the Port Theatre hold its first event of the month. It's part of the theater's Discovery series, highlighting local talent. Rapper Surreal will be taking the stage this Friday. He doesn't necessarily rap about the things you'd expect from a hip-hop artist, and he's passionate about mental health outreach, both through his music and a long history of work in the community. Earlier in the week, I spoke to Surreal about the show and his music. How excited are you to get back to doing a show?
I'm super excited, man. Like really, really excited. I actually just got a message from one of my fans that they got contacted by the Port Theatre and they'll be attending the show in person. So,
oh, that's awesome. Mostly it's going to be a live stream event, but this is still like the first thing the Port Theatre has done in quite some time. Can you maybe talk a little bit about what it's going to be like?
Yeah, absolutely. It's going to be me and my band on stage. They're going to have 3 different camera angles. I've got my friends doing live visuals for me. I've got a bunch of guest stars coming on stage. I'm performing with my son. We're performing music from my previous album and my newest album that hasn't been released yet.
And how would you introduce your music to someone who's not familiar with it?
My music is all about telling a story to help create connection, making people feel less alone with the situations that they've gone through my storytelling ability. And more recently, incorporating live band and organic song creation to create the landscape. And it's really wonderful to see the range of fans that I have from 2 years old all the way to 96 years old. And the thing about this show is I'm dedicating it to my oldest fan who recently passed away. And so the show is dedicated to Hilda. And that's kind of, I know she'll be watching over us. So it's kind of, for me, it's all about hearing people say, I don't really listen to rap music or hip hop, but I'll listen to your music because I really like it. So it's kind of like I feel like it's a genre-less thing for me. I don't like to fit into a box, but yeah, it's hard to describe that all in one sentence, I guess.
Yeah, for sure. Speaking of your most recent album, Blue, it contains a lot of heavy subject matter and it's got a lot of personal stuff in there. What was the experience like making that?
Well, it was very interesting. It was originally started out to be a live band album where I wanted to bring every single member of my band in the studio and create organically with Rob the Viking as well. But it ended up being a prediction of the future. I wrote songs about breaking up with my girlfriend, about turmoil and stress in my life when I didn't really have any yet. But as soon as I released the album, all of those songs came true. Basically, it's a weird manifestation thing where, you know, I sung about being in fights with my girlfriend, and then we broke up, and then, you know, just a lot of the content in that was a premonition. And it was more. Yeah, no, it's okay because that's where the best art comes from, right? But the thing about it was I didn't expect it all to come true. And then what happened, it ended up being more of like a snapshot of where my life was at that time as opposed to just a piece of art. So it kind of worked out in that way, but definitely unexpected.
And what do you hope people take away from listening to it?
I really want people, like I said, to relate to it and to realize that that even if they go through those same kind of struggles, there is you know, light at the end of the tunnel. There's another side to it, because I've had family members that struggle with mental health to the point of not being here anymore, and I was a crisis worker for 6 years, and I dealt with, you know, mostly youth. And I know what it's like to be in that dark place myself. So I hope my music can connect with someone on the level that they can say, you know, if he can do it, then I can do it. If he can get through the other side of this madness, you know, then hopefully so can I, right? I want to give hope. That's what my music.
You mentioned your as yet to be released album. It's kind of a follow-up to the Blue one. It's called, if I believe, the Red album. And that's more of a hopeful kind of upbeat one compared to the Blue one. Is that right?
It is, yeah. It's more of like the kind of, it's a totally different Surreal that people are going to hear on this new album, because it's kind of like I've broken free from a lot of different things in the past couple of years. And I think that this one's more of an upbeat, kind of a celebratory, I make a few songs on there that, where I generally don't rap about money or like partying or having fun, because that's not really my style. But on this Red album, I kind of do throw some of those tracks in the mix, but I've still got my storytelling, empowering stuff on there as well. So, but it's all upbeat compared to the Blue album. The Blue album's like, you listen to it and you're like, holy shit, this dude is sad. But you listen to the Red album and you're like, oh, okay, he's okay now. You know what I mean? It's like you get to see that journey from start to finish. And I originally planned it to be like that, but I didn't know that it was going to play out necessarily exactly the way it has. So,
well, I'm glad the good, happy, upbeat stuff is coming lately.
It is. And then I've got another album coming right after that. So it'll be called Elixir, and it'll be more of an R&B style, emotional stuff, but more of me singing. And it's going to be really cool too. So I'm excited for that.
Awesome. And is there a song that you'd recommend to get people hyped up for the show next week?
Yeah, I would say check out the newest video, Keep Moving, which has just surpassed 10,000 views on YouTube in 5 days. We have Gifted Gab from Oakland on there. I flew down to Oakland to shoot it. But if that doesn't grab you, then definitely listen to Holiday, Surreal Holiday. And that's a kind of an upbeat, more, it'll kind of give you a flavor of what we're going to be doing at the show.
All right. Sounds great. Surreal, thank you so much for talking to me.
Hey, no problem, man. Thanks for reaching out. I appreciate you guys for always supporting me. You guys are awesome.
From Surreal, here is Keep Moving.
The system so weak for the wisdom his people are missing. He's speaking, they listen. Deceitful decisions for the minute I'm living it. Did some real dark shit, now I get it legitimate. Perseverance of the spirit, hear it in the lyrics. The resilience and the brilliance of the fearless in the mirror. When the crowd goes nuts, all hands to the ceiling. You've never seen a drug that gave you the same feeling. Made a promise that I'd never be a victim of the squalor. Soon as I was born, turned a nickel to a dollar. Added up, did the math, no calculus. Wishing dad was here now just to laugh at this. How surreal is it to be on the track with Gift? Black-a-lish, the man who murders alphabets. When you dig deep down, start to see what you've been missing. Your own worst enemy, your only competition. Set your sights on the top, then you climb to that position. Find your inner strength to do the final repetition. Get up, do it now, don't procrastinate. This could be the second chance that you have to take. So when you get knocked down, do you get back up? Or do you let them keep you down? Never stand still, all the things you'll miss while the world is spinning round. Just keep on moving, keep on pushing, keep on moving, keep on moving, push it, keep on pushing, push it, keep moving, push it, keep moving, keep pushing, just moving.
It's the ninth inning, 2 out spaces loaded, prepared to fight again. Tonight winning will require the right vision. The obstacles cannot shut out the light within. Shine, illumination, divine jubilation. Every moment is for you to design new creation. Jump out of your mind and notice all the time you've been wasting. Do what's in front of you to align with the greatness inside you. Negativity and doubt will slide through. In the trenches of the battleground where they reside, do not allow illusion to get settled up inside you. See your target sitting in the ocean there and dive through. Sometimes you gotta fight the current and feel the pain and grunt only to find that life is worth it. Refining while I'm shining, now I'm rhyming for a purpose. Been at the bottom long and now I'm climbing to the surface to see. Cause giving up is worthless to me. I've studied very long and hard to earn this degree. Allergic to being absorbed in defeat. Looking inside for answers to the war within me.
So when you get knocked down, do you get back up? Or do you let them keep you down? Never stand still, all the things you'll miss while the world is spinning round. Just keep on moving, keep on pushing, keep on moving, keep on moving, push it, keep
Surreal and Gift of Gab with Keep Moving. You can catch Surreal's live stream show at the Port Theatre Friday, June 25th at 7:30. That's our show for today. Thank you for listening. Midcoast Morning is hosted and produced by me, Joe Pugh, with Newscast from Elijah Robinson, who will be joining the show full-time next week. Thank you to Jesse Woodward and Arbie for production assistance. Our theme music is Good Company from Nanaimo band Venice. You can find their music on Bandcamp. You can help support Midcoast Morning as a project of CHLY's news department by making a donation at chly.ca/donate. Have a story you'd like us to cover or have feedback on a previous story? Email us at news@chly.ca. Thank you for listening.